Good morning, everyone. I will call this meeting to order and ask that we stand for a moment of silent reflection. Thank you. I would ask the clerk if there is any rise and report from our in closed session.
Thank you, Warden. One brief matter to report out. County Council did this morning meet in camera for a period of 2 minutes to approve its in-camera minutes of its meeting of April 3rd, which addressed the matters that are in the agenda.
Thank you. We have one delegation this morning. Alex Palamaka, Chair of the Board of Directors of Sarnia Lambton Economic Partnership. Could we have a motion to allow Alex? Councillor Rumbout, second by Councillor Napper. All in favor? It's carried. Welcome, Alex. Yep, push the button, go for it.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Thank you, County Council. My name is Alex Palamaka. I am currently the chair of the Sarnia Lambton Economic Partnership. Some of you may know me from my day job at Blue Water Power, but I am a volunteer on our board of directors for the Sarnia Lambton Economic Partnership. I have appeared in front of you before, and I believe, Mr. Warden, that I may owe you 3 or 4 minutes from the last time. So I will be brief this morning. I do have Stephen Thompson with me here. He's the CEO of Sarnia Lambton Economic Partnership. He's here if you have any operational questions. But today, the topic of discussion for today is primarily governance. That's a board of directors' responsibility, so I'm up here solo for now. Why are we here? I want to make one thing clear, that we are not here in an official corporate capacity. Sarnia Lambton Economic Partnership is a non-profit corporation without share capital. We don't have any shareholders, so this is not an official shareholder meeting. We're not looking for a specific resolution from County Council. We are meeting with the county because you are our primary funding source. We have a very close relationship, and we want to continue that close relationship. The other reason that we are here is because in July of 2016, County Council passed a resolution asking Sarnia Lambton Economic Partnership to amend its bylaws in 3 ways. First, they wanted to appoint 4 community directors, and those directors were to be appointed by the striking committee for the County of Lambton, and it was to represent the 4 geographic quadrants of the County of Lambton. Second thing they did was they wanted to clarify that the chair of the Sarnia Lambton Economic Partnership should be from the private sector. The way that we incorporated that into our bylaws was to say that the chair cannot hold an elected position. The third change that County Council asked for back in July of 2016 was to have firm term limits of 2 3-year terms, so that a board member could only have a maximum of 6 years on the board of directors. Back in 2016, we dutifully made those changes, and after 3 years now of our experience, we thought it was time to come back to County Council and offer you our perspective on how we would like to tweak some of those issues, in particular because we are in the middle of bylaw review in any event. We were looking at the Ontario Nonprofit Corporations Act and its possible implementation. So we were in the midst of governance review anyway. So now that we have modernized our bylaws to deal with sort of administrative matters, exciting things that dealing with committee structures, we cleaned up some of the titles in our bylaw. We made a 2-year term for the chair and vice chair. We've incorporated rules regarding telephone meetings, and we've clarified in-camera rules. So we are now able to meet in camera to discuss matters similar to what County Council might discuss in camera. So those administrative matters have been cleaned up in our bylaws. I'm not here to speak to that, but the point is we were in the process of updating our bylaws, so we thought it was time to come back to the county and give our feedback on the 3 directions that you provided to us previously. First, with respect to the term limit, we're recommending to our board of directors at the May meeting, and it will ultimately, if approved, go to the June AGM. We are recommending that we have 2-year terms for the chair and vice chair. There's one small issue that if your term happens to expire while you're in the middle of your 2-year term, your term in office can be extended by 1 year. So that's just a small tweak. It's fairly common in most corporations. In fact, most corporations will allow you to continue past your term as long as you are an executive. We have simply said, if you're in the middle of your term as chair or vice chair, you can extend it by 1 year. The second issue the county provided us direction on was the chair not holding elected office, and that is continuing. And then now I want to spend most of our time talking about the number of directors, because that has been a challenge for the board of directors, and I want to talk about why that would be a challenge. There's one simple fact that seems a little bit odd when you look at the Sarnia-Lambton Economic Partnership Board of Directors, and that's the fact that we have twice as many board members as we do staff. That makes it difficult to be a nimble and engaged board of directors. A large board of directors is good from 2 perspectives. So having a large board is not necessarily a problem on its own. What it's good for is to ensure broad representation, so input from a broad sector of interest. And it's also great to have a large number of champions out in your community. So there are benefits to having a large board of directors. We're not here saying that that's always bad, but we are saying is that for a board of governance, it's not ideal. That if we believe that the board of directors should take a more active role and be more engaged in the governance of the Sarnia-Lambton Economic Partnership, as opposed to the model that we had, I believe, 20 years ago when it was the Council for Economic Renewal. There were upwards of 40 representatives in the community. And I think the general view of that was that it was great for getting the message out, it was great for bringing the message in, but it was not great from a governance perspective. So we are now moving towards what we would call more of a governance model. We have made the large board, the 20 members on our board of directors, work, and I think it's worked well by having committees. We have had strategic planning committees that has done some good work for the organization. We've had a resource allocation committee that has done some good work. And that's how we have made a large board work. But now I think we're at a stable point. We have a stable foundation where we have a very good strategic plan that we are enacting. We have Stephen Thompson is now in place, has his feet under him, and is well known in the community. And he has a full complement of staff for the first time in the last several years. So I think we feel like we are on a stable foundation, and it's time to get back to the business of governance. So that's why we are recommending to the board at the next meeting and at the AGM the change to reduce the number of board members from 20 to 14. Now, we are mindful of the fact that the county provided us with the direction it provided last time for very good reasons, which was to ensure that there is broad representation across the county. So what we did was we asked ourselves, how can we accomplish that objective in a different way? So what we have done in our bylaws is we've said we have 7 business directors already. Let's ensure, and today those 7 business directors are selected on the basis of their business sector expertise. So we try to have representation from agriculture, from industry, from real estate community, from utilities. So we try to have broad business sector representation. What we're now going to do is add to our bylaw a requirement that wherever possible, we will ensure that those 7 business directors are distributed amongst the 4 geographic quadrants. So that is how we are going to accomplish the objective that the county, the direction that the county provided us previously. The other thing that we looked at is there is no ideal board size. We wanted to get to as low as we could reasonably justify. So in addition to reducing those 4 directors, we've also looked at our ex officio positions. And we primarily looked at it from the perspective of where is there any redundancy that we could justify eliminating. And so we identified 2 positions that we felt we could eliminate on the basis that they were redundant. The first was the city's CAO position. The county CAO already sits on our board of directors as an active member and is the perpetual treasurer for the organization. And the other position that we identified as potentially redundant was the general manager of the Sarnia-Lambton Business Development Corporation, on the basis that the Chamber of Commerce is represented, and that has a more broad community representation. So those are the 2 other positions that we're proposing to eliminate. So with the 4 community director positions being eliminated, the 2 ex officio positions being eliminated, we are being reduced from 20 board members to 14 board members. So I wanted to come to County Council to provide you with that update, to let you know that is the path that we are on. We are not looking for County Council to endorse this position one way or the other, but this is an opportunity for you to provide feedback and let us know whether you think that we are on the right path. And that's it, and 52 seconds.
Any questions for Mr. Palamaca? Must have did a good job of presenting that.
Excellent, thank you.
So I would ask, thank you for your presentation.
You're welcome, thank
And
you.
we'll see how we go forward with at the board. Councillor Bradley.
Want a motion from this group endorsing the direction for the select board?
My view is that we don't require one. I have not talked to the county solicitor about that specifically, but I don't believe that we are required to do that.
Because I don't know what people in this room feel about these changes. Would it not be wiser for us to endorse the direction put forward by Mr. Palamakas, so it's on the record County Council is moving in that direction, or support of that direction?
I was going to ask for a motion to receive the information, but I don't know whether it needs to be endorsed. But I'll let...
I think there are too many buttons. There we go. Ultimately, we're a separate organization, so I understand sort of the history, but we're a separate organization, and there's no need to endorse it. Our files will reveal and disclose in perpetuity because of our minutes, meaning that the SLEP was here, they made their presentation, they informed us that the changes to their governance model, and we moved forward. If there was going to be an objection to it, then of course that would be dealt with through a motion and whatnot. But I think ultimately a motion to simply receive the note that we got from Sarnia-Lambton Economic Partnership would do. In fact, I would suggest that we not get into, as a body, in terms of endorsing it, because again, we're a separate body, separately governed, separately incorporated, if you wish, than we are at SLEP. If we were going to deal with a financial matter through our funding arm, through our funding perspective, then of course that would be a different, sort of a different angle to take a look at it. But I would suggest that no hands-on specific endorsement, perhaps a receive and file, and that be more than adequate.
Moved by Councillor Bradley that we receive this for information, second by Councillor Loosely. I seen a question from Councillor Napper.
Yes, there had to be a reason why we made that recommendation, and I'm trying to think what it was now. I don't, we'd asked that you restructure with Tourism Sarnia-Lambton at the time. Was that all part of that? I was wondering, for a lot of new councillors here, if you couldn't refresh your memory and bring back a small report as to why we requested that, because it must have been important at the day, and I don't see any changes in your organization where we should not honor that today. And just remind us, that was a while ago, and some of us, our memories aren't as long as they used to be.
Stefan, can you?
Well, if Alex wants to start, and I have a bit of a unique position on that because I was in the private sector at that time, a member of Sarnia-Lambton Economic Partnership, and a member of the governance group at Sarnia-Lambton Economic Partnership that helped bring into the bylaws of that organization County Council's motion at the time. So I'll leave. Do you want to go first, and then I'll fill in if there's anything to be filled in?
I think there's one point that I wanted to emphasize up front is that we're not proposing to eliminate the requirement to have the 4 quadrants of the county represented. We're just looking to do it differently. Instead of it being 4 additional positions, we're simply saying we have 7 positions. Let's ensure that those positions represent the 4 geographic quadrants of the county. So we're not eliminating the requirement, we're just doing it differently. I would be reluctant to speculate as to the rationale in July of 2016 for the reason to include the 4 quadrants as 4 additional councillors. All I can say is the facts that might tweak your memory is the motion was, I believe, moved by Councillor Todd Case at the time, and they voted on each of those 3 separate issues separately, and ultimately that resolution did pass to ensure that the 4 additional quadrants were represented. That's the only thing I can offer you. I can't provide you with any rationale as to why that was done. That would be in the memories of the people in this room.
Any other questions or comments? We have a motion to receive this for information. All in favor of that motion? That is carried. Thank you very much for your presentation. Item number 8 is the adoption of the Lambton County Council open session minutes from April the 3rd. We have a mover and a seconder for that, Councillor Broad and Councillor Marriott. Any questions regarding those minutes? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Correspondence, item A is correspondence to receive and file. It's regarding a proclamation of Economic Development Week, and we do not do proclamations. That was set a number of years ago by the county, but we do recognize that Economic Development Week is happening, and SLUP is having an open house, I believe, next week. We hope to all attend and see what's at the SLUP. So I would need a motion to receive and file the correspondence. Councillor Cook, Councillor Loosley. Any questions? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Item 10A, Corporate Service Division, a report there for alternate member appointments. Just a FYI. Councillor Bradley.
It's a question. Is the intention to call them all in, swear them in, give them a briefing on this place and how it functions?
Good question. I haven't really thought about that. Well, I thought about it. I haven't necessarily made a decision on that. But I think if we get to a critical number, it probably would make sense to bring them in and have them sworn in. At this point in time, I'm still waiting to see if there's going to be any further alternate appointments. I have been in communications with some of your municipalities, and some of them seem to indicate that there might be additional appointments. So at that point in time, I'll bring that back and bring it in. However, if somebody shows up, for instance, the policy shows up, meaning an alternate member shows up, the policy is for that individual to communicate with us at the clerk's department, and of course with the warden as soon as possible, so that we make arrangements to have them sworn in at the meeting that they appear at.
Follow-up?
Unless I missed it, I think one deficiency is there at both levels is I don't think there's anything in there that says that you've got to give the alternate 24 hours notice or 48 hours notice. And the same applies, I think, to that person coming here, and maybe that's something we should look at. It's happened to all of us at some point. You just can't be here, and you may not know till the night before or even that morning. So, but there's nothing there that says what you need to do, and there's nothing there to really, at the local level, deal with that either. And I think that needs to be straightened out before we get some confusion here down the road.
So that's correct. There's nothing in the legislation that requires any kind of advance notice before an alternate member actually shows up to a meeting as an alternate to one of you. However, we've drafted a policy that says, look, where possible, out of courtesy, can you provide us with advance notice? And that policy has been communicated to all of the municipalities, to all of your clerks. So it's on the books. However, nothing stops anybody from showing up at the last minute. And if they do show up at the last minute, then we will swear them in for that meeting, unless they've already been sworn in.
Okay. Councillor Han?
So I apologize, I didn't include an alternate for the Village of Point Edward. I misunderstood and thought because we had the elected deputy mayor role that I didn't have to supply another name. So we'll take care of that paperwork at our next.
Okay. So we have items 10 and 11, the committee minutes from the Creative County Committee. If I could have a motion to receive those for information. Councillor Marriott and Councillor Miller, any questions? Councillor Rumbouts.
Just wondering what the intention is of these alternates. Like, I had thought if it was one of us had to take a long period of time, if you had family members sick or you yourself was sick, then they were there. Is the intention for them to come to a meeting that we just couldn't make it to for whatever reason? Or is it more of a long-term plan?
There's a number of ways to answer that, Warden, so I'll take it in steps, really 3 steps. One of which is explain Section 267 and 268 of the municipal legislation that applies in terms of alternates. Secondly, how we've created the policy. And thirdly, the decision-making that happens at the local municipality. So with respect to the first point, under Section 267 and 268, local municipalities have the opportunity to appoint from any one of their members, subject to their own bylaws, an alternate for you. In the event that, pursuant to Section 267, you can't, for whatever reason, attend meetings for a period of 1 month or greater. That's Section 267. However, under Section 268, which is the new provisions following Bill 68, it effectively says your alternate member can attend on your behalf for any reason for any one meeting. So it really depends on, so that gets to the second point. We adopted the policy, says we recognize this at our level. However, we need to have communications with the local tiers, with your clerks, with yourselves, in terms of who's an alternate member. So our policy effectively echoes, for the most part, the municipal legislation, which says, hey, look, if you're going to appoint an alternate member, we need to know that in advance. So provide us with your resolution, your bylaw, and of course the name and contact information for that member. In terms of the third point now, is that the arrangements that you make. Those are really up to the local, to you and your council to make whatever arrangements you wish in terms of when they show up. So for instance, if you have to miss a meeting, you say, you know what, I don't want an alternate member there because I'm missing a meeting. The agenda item may be of non-consequence to my municipality. Does that person need to attend? That is your affairs, and we leave that to your municipality. Hopefully that addresses the question.
Councillor Napper.
I don't think the intention is to muddy this with a whole bunch of rules. The intention of this was to make sure that everybody had representation at every meeting of county council, and I think that's the bottom line that we should be trying to do. And I don't know if I'm going to be sick tomorrow morning 2 weeks ahead of time. When somebody's here and there's a meeting, I want somebody here representing the town of Lambton, Wyoming, because we get 3 votes and some of these other people, and there's some pretty contentious items come up sometimes, and if you're sick, you're missing out and all that. And I think that should be the bottom line of this whole bylaw. That's what I think what the government meant, that everybody got represented here. And I think with some of these rules you're trying to put in there, like 2 weeks' notice and all this stuff, you're muddying the waters.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's where we're at. Those are the rules. There's nothing that's muddying the waters here. All we did was essentially get into a communication, say, hey, look, what are the communications? But ultimately, fundamentally, if you have an alternate member appointed for your seats and they show up and they're properly appointed, they show up, we swear them in, and that's the end of the story. When we got ahead of this was to effectively deal with it in terms of communication. So all we did through this body, you approved the policy, was to say, hey, this is the communication, this expectations, because we cannot have somebody show up and say, I'm the alternate. I needed at least a resolution or your bylaw, and secondly, a certificate from your clerk to say, hey, this person was duly appointed in my municipality. That's simply all what it was.
Councillor Arnold.
Thank you, Warden Weaver. When we first started talking about this, I thought it would be pretty well just for folks that didn't have a second person or more on county council, and now it seems like all of us can have an alternate. So I guess in St. Clair's case, Steve and I will have to talk and see how many we want to come.
Any other discussions? I have a motion to receive these two pieces of reports. All in favor of that? That's carried. Thank you. Item number 12 is a report requiring a motion. This is dealing with the ad hoc committee and our code of conduct. That report is in here, and there's a recommendation from the ad hoc committee regarding the code of conduct. Is there someone prepared to move that recommendation or something other? Councillor Marriott, you'll move the recommendation, second by Councillor Cook. Councillor White.
Thank you, Warden. Wonder if a member of the committee could elaborate on the intention of the mediation part. And that's just, my interpretation of it is that if the intention is to have the complainant possibly face-to-face with somebody who has allegedly breached, then there may be an intimidation factor that goes along with that may prevent somebody from actually filing a complaint. So I just wonder if we could, it's great if it prevents vexatious investigations, but I'm concerned that it may actually be an intimidation and prevent a possible complaint. So I just wonder if somebody could elaborate on the intention of the mediation piece.
Would you like to speak to that? Who? Mayor Bradley, go for it.
Well, as a member of the committee, I think it's quite clear. The concern is in many places, there's never been any attempt to mediate. And mediate does not mean face-to-face meetings, but it's just to have that dialogue, because what it appears to happen in many places is the integrity commissioner jumps straight to the full process. So at least this was there as an option. And so, and Councillor White, it's not meant to have any confrontation between anyone, and that's, if that needs to be cleared up, it should be.
Further comment?
Correct. Mediation, there's no requirement for a face-to-face, and most integrity commissioners would be savvy enough to understand sort of the circumstances of the context of a potential complaint, so as not to aggravate perhaps emotions or whatever it may be. So typically mediations oftentimes will occur sometimes face-to-face, but oftentimes, at least in my experience with the litigation world, arbitration world, will not. It all depends on the circumstances of the allegations and the context of the allegations. But more importantly, at the end of the day, mediation, the requirement of the bylaw, and this is at the request of the ad hoc committee, was to say, hey, look, let's provide another sort of softer approach to conflict resolution, and it's purely voluntary, meaning that if somebody says, I'm not interested in mediation when it's proposed by the integrity commissioner, that's the end of mediation.
Okay. Any other questions? We have a motion on the floor. Councillor Bradley?
The only comment, this is a really good example of something was presented to us, and it was well-shaped and formed, but council said, no, we have our own practical, realistic concerns. So the committee had, I would say, a very good discussion and hammered out, and they did a good job. I think the key in all this, besides what we can change, is the end paragraph on page 30 of 73, authorizing the warden to write to the minister to say, for the benefit of the province of Ontario and for municipalities, is to bring in rules that cover a lot of the gaps that aren't there today, which relate to universal rules, natural justice, procedural fairness. That to me is the critical thing out of this committee. And I think that letter itself will send a message to the province. They need to do this before it becomes a huge issue across the province.
Okay. Call the question. All in favor of that? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Committee reports. We have one additional report to add after the AM committee reports, but I would call on Chair Arnold.
Thank you, Warden Weaver. Members of the County Council, I'd like to present the April 17th, 2019 AM committee minutes for your consideration.
Thank you. Infrastructure Development Services, Item 1, Information Reports. Item 2, Bylaw Appointing Coordinators. Public Health Services, item 3 is correspondence. Item 4 is information reports regarding public health. Item 5, there is a correction on item 5. That motion was tabled, and it's listed there as carried. Item number 6 is changes to the public health, and there's a report we'll add after this. Cultural Service Division, item number 7, correspondence. Item number 8, information report. Item 9 is adjournment. Councillor Bradley?
Just a question on those minutes. We passed a motion to invite the two MPPs here. Are we having any progress on having them come to meet with County Council in a special session?
They have been invited and were not able to attend this morning. We offered that. I think we'll continue to offer and leave it open at any time that ask them when they're available, and we'll convene County Council to have them for a discussion. We're proceeding on that way. Councillor Arnold.
Warden Weaver, members of County Council, I just move this day's minutes as corrected.
Second by Councillor Marriott. Questions? All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. On our desk this morning, we received a follow-up report dealing with public health services with some background and information there. I'd like a motion to receive that for information. Councillor Broad, second by Councillor Bradley. Questions regarding that? Councillor Bradley.
Well, just appreciate this information, but it appears very clear from the Minister of Health that they're not backing off or changing their direction on this. So again, that's why this meeting with the two MPPs are really important before the time runs out and they push this through, because it will have devastating impact. And the government's attitude is, well, people are fear-mongering when they say that. That is not true. When you look at vaccinations, you look at addiction issues, you look at the frontline services that community health groups provide. So I think we really need to be forceful on this one, really need to be forceful. And if that meeting isn't organized, within the month of May, then I think we need to take other actions. We've tried to do it the softly way, but that doesn't seem to be impacting on the government. And the same issue with the paramedics. The devastation it could cause at the local level in trying to reform and deliver the service is immense. And yet I would say, I don't think there's anyone in this room that believes that service isn't being provided properly, either the paramedics, EMS, or community health.
Thank you. I'm sure there will be, I've been in my discussions with Minister McNaughton and MP Bailey, they assured us there would be much more consultation coming up in the next number of months. So I'm not sure they're going to change their mind, but they're going to have consultations. So we have a motion to receive this report. Councillor White.
Yeah, thank you. And I want to reiterate what Councillor Bradley just stated. I want to thank staff for their incredibly detailed report. I knew it was going to be serious, but the implications are spelled out very clearly in here for this council and for this organization. I think it's incredibly important, again, just to reiterate that we have these meetings with the MPPs as soon as possible. If they're on different days, I will make myself available at any expense to be here. But I just think that the implications in here are well laid out by staff. I thank them for their time and attention to the detail on that.
Okay. Any other comments? Councillor Arnold.
Thank you, Warden Weaver. I guess I echo the same sentiments that's been already said, but I think one of the things we need to look at is have a report, and I'm sure it's going to take place, come back to the appropriate committee on how we're going to deal with the cost increases, because they are going to come. And I've seen this action in the past, and I think a lot of us have lived through things from years ago. And no matter how much gnashing of the teeth in the outer limits there were, it didn't seem to slow it down. It was going to take place. So we need to understand how we're going to prepare for this. I believe the meetings are going to be good, and I think that's very appropriate to do. But when you start adding a 2% levy increase right off the hop, and that's just essentially in one spot, there's going to be many more. And I think we need to start looking hard and fast of how we're going to deal with all of this. And I agree 100% with what's been said. I think the report was excellent, and I appreciate it very much. And I think, too, that we really behoove it to our folks that are reporting in the media. This report should go a long way for them to get that message out to the constituents. It's not going to be an easy pill to swallow if this thing continues on its path it is.
Okay. Any other comments? All in favor of receiving this report? Opposed? It's carried. We have did the ad hoc committee meeting minutes. So, PM committee, I would call on Chair Bean to present this report.
Thank you, Ward and members of County Council. The PM committee met on April 17th, and I present these minutes for your consideration.
Thank you. Long-term care division, item 1 is correspondence. Item 2, information reports. Item 3, regarding quality improvement plans. Corporate services, item 4, building inspection and bylaw enforcement fees. Item number 5, open data policy. Item number 6, dealing with Source Protection Committee. Finance, Facilities, and Court Services. Item 7, with correspondence. Item 8, regarding council remuneration. Item number 9, regarding the countywide tax policy. Social Service Division, item 10 is information report, and item 11 is adjournment. Councilor Bean.
Thank you, Warden. I move these minutes.
Seconder, Councilor Miller. Any further questions? All in favor of that report? Opposed? That is carried. Other business? Councilor Stark.
Yes, I rise to put forth a motion which was discussed briefly during the budget presentations, and I do this seeking your permission with respect to introducing a motion whereby the budget would include a actual expense column similar to what was previously done, but now has been eliminated, and I'd ask that the actual expense column be added to the budget report.
Okay. Is there a seconder for that motion? Is that motion in order at this time? Or should it be a notice of motion?
It really depends how council wishes to deal with it. You can have a notice of motion and treat this as your notice of motion and then vote on it at the next meeting, and or depending on how council wishes to deal with it, vote on it here.
Okay. If there's a seconder, I guess we'll deal with it. Councilor Arnold? Any discussion regarding that? Councilor Loosley?
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I support this, and I think this is very important and is an important aid for us when we look at the financial and the budget. So I think this is a good thing.
Okay. Councilor Cook?
Procedurally, shouldn't this just be a notice of motion for today and then we vote on it at the next meeting?
Really should be, I think, too, but Councilor Bradley?
I'd make the case the councillor gave notice, because it was raised and he told us what he was going to do, and now he's brought it to us at a previous meeting.
Sorry.
Can Can I just ask Mr. Ennis, do you have any objections to this direction? No, Sorry, Mr. Ennis, do you have any objections to this?
We used to provide considerably more numbers in the budget than we have for the last 2 years, and the reason that we went to the presentation that you receive now was that a committee of councilors of the day had been set and were asked to review the document. If my memory is correct, there was a lot of discussion that they found a lot of the information somewhat overwhelming, and the question was, how do we streamline the budget to allow council to focus on the primary issue? What has happened is with the document, the way that it is presented right now, is it asks you, or the focus is on the overviews provided by each department, which gives you a combination of dollars and narrative to try and explain why the numbers are the dollars that are being asked for in the current year and how they compare to the previous year. We also have an extremely robust budget to actual or variance analysis that we report on several times a year, which gives you details as to what has happened with the existing budget and how that is varied. And then, I guess the bottom line is a lot of the information that's being asked for here is already being presented. It's just being presented in different formats. And again, we can do whatever council wants us to do, but, what we present is what we were asked to present. And it seems to me, from my perspective, that the format that was adopted 3 years ago has allowed for the debate to focus on why are you spending the dollars as opposed to, essentially what the dollars are. So that would be my only comment.
Okay. So I guess the procedure issue is, should this have been a notice of motion, or will we deal with the motion?
Correct. So under your rules, you treat it as a notice of motion now because it comes up for the first time. And the purposes for notice of motion is so that you have advanced knowledge of what may be discussed, debated, and prepare for it and prepare whatever questions you may have, and of course staff to respond. However, if you wish to deal with the substantive matter today, you can. Your rules of procedure allow you to do so if you vote by 2/3 majority on the substantive issue, i.e. you wish to address it today. So right now it's a notice of motion, but if you do wish to address it today, there's a way to do that.
Councillor Stark.
I'm happy to leave this whole discussion as a notice of motion because, quite frankly, there's no hurry. Like, this is not a time-sensitive request. And with Mr. Ennis's description, it seems to me that the information is readily available in terms of producing the information for the budget session. So it's not a cumbersome or an onerous request. It's simply an additional information item which literally is already being produced. But I would raise the point that with several new councilors in this chamber, they were not aware of the existing reports as it related to past expenditures when we dealt with this particular budget. So it reinforces the concept of full information and understanding the information relative to actual to budget. Thank you.
Councillor Arnold.
Thank you, Warden Weaver. I just need to understand the procedural piece here, because in the Municipal Act, it does not say you ever have to give a notice of motion. It's an option. And this chamber has always treated it as such. So if something has changed, I need to understand when that happened. And I'd like to see where it did happen, because it's still my understanding that any motion can be brought forward at any time from this floor, and as long as the warden accepts it. And there is nothing stated that it has to be a 2/3 majority and to take a notice of motion and move it into a motion. So I guess maybe it's just my ignorance if I'm wrong. So please send me a note and the information.
Is it in the Municipal Act or is it in our procedure bylaw? Because I was going to say it's our procedure bylaw requires notices of motion. Okay. Okay.
Yes, I don't have it in front of me. It's a matter that's dealt with under the rules of procedure, but I'm happy to send out to council by the end of the day what that rule is, and then the two-thirds rule as well. That's in your rules of procedure. Unfortunately, I don't have it in front of me. Perhaps I needed a notice of motion on that discussion.
It's in one of these drawers here. So, right now, it's here, it's been moved and seconded as a motion, but the mover is agreeable to having it as a notice of motion dealt with at the next meeting? Okay, so we will deal with that at the next meeting. Any other business? Councillor Arnold.
Thank you, Warden Weber, and my question will be directed to Mr. Cole. I don't need an answer today, but I would like to get a little bit of an explanation. And I just want to bring up an example of why we have difficulties in the general population, and it's not really our fault or any member of our staff's fault. Out at 549 Wilkes-Barre Line, I had a resident contact me, and he wanted to build a new drive shed. So he went in to apply for his building permit, and our building official, who was very efficient, does a great job, brought about a map that said he's in a wetland, which I don't understand when it changed. I've never seen it changed, and the owner didn't realize that it changed. And the reason why nobody really thought that there was a change from agricultural to a designated wetland of some description is because Union Gas cut off his outlet for his drainage. So he had a new drain put in a few years ago. He systematically tiled the farm to get better drainage. There's a working gas well on his property. None of those things are allowed in a wetland. And yet, according to the designation for his farm now, all of a sudden, miraculously, his farm's turned into a wetland. And I guess where I'm really struggling, two things. One is with the building official showing him the line, he's now at risk that he doesn't have enough setback from the road to even put his drive shed on an operating farm, which is, to me, kind of odd. But I'd like to understand why and how M&R, because we got into this problem when we went through the official plan, that they were sitting in an office someplace in Toronto looking at the ortho maps that we paid for and saying, oh, this farm's wet right now, so this is now a wetland. And we had, I believe, 70 of those changed in my municipality alone a couple of years ago. And there's got to be a process or a procedure that they have to follow. And I understand that they have to come on site, and I've seen the biologist's reports, and they're very comprehensive, but no one has ever visited this gentleman. No one, to his knowledge, has ever been on his farm doing this report, and yet all of a sudden it's worked its way through the ministry down to our building official telling him that he is now in the middle of a 50-acre wetland that's got 2 acres of bush in a corner and a house on the front and a barn over beside the house, which is in the middle of the wetland, by the way, the barn that he has. So I need to understand how this process works, and maybe Mr. Cole, if you'd like, I can give you a notice of motion, if that's my procedure, to maybe have a report put together to have an explanation of how this works and how we can ensure people understand this. Because as I drove here today, there was very few farms that wouldn't be classified as a wetland if somebody did an ortho search right now, because they're all underwater. And this isn't the only area in the province of Ontario that has the problem today. There is many provincial areas that do have exactly the same issue, and I don't understand how all those people could build their houses where they did and their drive sheds and everything else when they'd be in a wetland too today. So if you'd like a notice of motion, I will ask to have a report put together, and I believe it'll go to the AM committee, understanding how zoning and designations get changed and how we can ensure that the landowners know when this takes place and the reasoning why.
Okay. I don't believe we need a notice of motion to ask for a report. So that can be a request for a report to AM committee with the information. If you have any more information on that, it would be good to share that with prior to writing that report. Okay. Councillor Marriott.
Thank you, Warden Weaver. Just to address that, Councillor Arnold, didn't we discuss, like, when we discussed that in the meetings that you were referring to, we were told that the M&R can come in and designate a wetland anytime they feel appropriate. Isn't that what I don't know why we need a report on this, because it was very clear at the time,
Yeah.
I thought.
You want to speak to that now, or you want to put that in the report? Go ahead.
And through you, Mr. Warden, and I think Councilor Arnold hit on the nail on the head, that this is part and parcel with the discussion that we had through the official plan. We recognize that deficiency, and we have appealed those wetland designations as part of our official plan, and we are appealing them now currently. Part of the problem is that the lack of response on the Ministry of Natural Resources part. We are in an FOI process, and even for the original official plan concerns, we still don't have the information to argue this at the LPAT. So these are big concerns, and a report, I think, I'm not sure I'm going to have as many answers as you would like in a report, but we can lay out the lay of the land, so to speak, and we can move on from there.
Follow up, Councillor Arnold?
Just to address Councillor Marriott, the reason why a lot of this came to light to me, Kevin, was because I went to a drainage course. And it said in the drainage course, you could not have a municipal drain in a wetland, and you could not tile in a wetland, and you could not have an operating gas well or an oil well in a wetland. And so all three of those things are already in this wetland that someone come in their infinite wisdom and designated. And it's not part of the original plan that we had. This is over and above. Like, there was a number of them that we had that we brought up during the official plan review, and I think there was 70 that they backed off on and said, oh, well, nobody really went out and looked at those. We just saw them from our mapping. And I think this is where this one got caught in the same type of thing, because in March, it always lays water, but it always dried off eventually, and it was farmed. But now it's impacting more than just the ag side. It's impacting a building on a piece of property so the gentleman can conduct his business. So I just find it odd. Just a little explanation. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So we are going to get a little follow-up report. Any other new business? I'm going to bring your attention to the two plants that are sitting on the middle table. And the banner that's in the corner, I think most of you are aware, we had had participated in part of the Top 7 tour that we had here last Wednesday and Thursday all day, and for breakfast on Friday morning, sending off Lou to the airport. But I want to, the B-bomb that was presented, one of the pillars for the Top 7 is sustainability. And throughout that tour, where one of the stops on that tour was down at Amjuan, they have a greenhouse there that is producing native plants to the area. So they presented the county with a couple pots of bee-balm, and it will get planted here at the county someplace. And we appreciate the commitment of everyone throughout the tour. We had an excellent tour throughout the county. We started up in the north and went down to the Plimpton, Wyoming, Warwick, and toured the college. Was an integral part in the research park in making presentations. And as warden and going around through the tour, it is amazing, the people and the commitment and what we have in the county. So I think we need to be very proud of the accomplishments, the committee that put it together, Sarnia Lambton Economic Partnership, their part in that circles different aspects throughout the community, talking of what we have here. So I think we had a good tour and showcased our Sarnia Lambton in the Top 7, and we're looking forward to going to New York coming up, but I just wanted to say thanks to all the organizers and all the committee in the county. We understand, we realize that there was a conflict with the Rural Games dinner that I heard was very well attended, but unfortunately, the ICF tour got scheduled, and ICF pulls rank. When they say they're coming, that's what we have to do. So it was a good, and kudos to everybody involved, and those plants will get planted. Councillor Arnold.
Thank you, Warden Weber, and appreciate the work that you've done with the ICF and all the team that's done that. I just wanted to make everyone aware that the Anjouan folks are just, they have a tremendous heart for the natural world, as we all know, and the greenhouse that's on their property or in their community, that was provided by Shell. Yep. They're the ones that made the grant funding available to put that in there. It was a community partnership, and what a great way to reach out and work with them. And I just wanted to highlight that our industrial partners, they continue to go above and beyond to try and help us with the natural environment that we live in as well. And yet the folks from Anjouan, it's tremendous the work that they've done there.
And that was recognized during the tour about the partners with Shell. Actually, I think it was Shell that had a training meeting that was in the resource center where we were toured through that morning. The gymnasium was full of Shell employees. So there's all kinds of partnerships, and we learned a lot about those going through around the tour. So, any other business? Councillor Han.
Sorry, just to add to that topic, when we were in the village, when we were building our splash pad, we met with Anjouan. They wanted to review the project and have input, and we went away with an agreement that they are planting a natural vegetation area right in front of the splash pad, which they will work on this spring. And so that was a positive outcome of meeting together and getting them involved. Thank you.
Very good. Anything else? Notice of bylaws.
It is moved by Councillor Boucher and seconded by Councillor Byrd that bylaws 7, 8, 15 to 22 of 2019 as circulated be taken as read a first and second time.
All in favor? It's carried. Thank you.
It is moved by Councillor Byrd and seconded by Councillor Boucher that bylaws 7, 8, and bylaws 15 to 22nd of 2019 as circulated be taken as read a third and final time.
All in favor? That's carried. And motion to adjourn. Councillor Bean, Councillor Napper. All in favor?